Long before David ever faced Goliath, before the songs of his victories echoed through Israel, before the crown ever touched his head, there was a quiet day in Bethlehem when a prophet walked into town carrying a horn of oil. It was on this day that God chose a shepherd boy to be king. This is the story of David's anointing. Israel was restless. The people had their first king, Saul, but Saul had turned his heart away from the Lord. Though chosen, he had disobeyed God's command, seeking his own way instead of following the voice of the one who raised him up. The Spirit of God who once empowered Saul to lead the nation was departing from him, and in heaven's plan, another king was being prepared. Not one the people expected, not one who fit the image of a warrior king, but one who was after God's own heart. Samuel, the prophet of Israel, grieved for Saul. He had loved the king and had anointed him years earlier with his own hands. But now the Lord spoke to Samuel and said, "How long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem, for I have chosen one of his sons to be king." Samuel trembled at the thought. To walk openly with oil in hand, looking for a new king, while Saul still sat on the throne, was dangerous. If Saul heard of it, the prophet's life would be in jeopardy. But God gave Samuel a cover. He was to go and offer a sacrifice in Bethlehem, and through that act the Lord would reveal his chosen one. So Samuel set out, carrying the weight of a secret only he and God knew. When he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town met him, fearful, asking, "Do you come in peace?" And Samuel answered, "Yes, in peace. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come to the sacrifice with me." Among those invited was Jesse, a man of Bethlehem, and his sons. This was the family through whom God's hidden plan would unfold. When Samuel saw Jesse's firstborn, Eliab, tall, strong, broad-shouldered, his heart nearly leapt. Surely, he thought, this must be the Lord's anointed. But the voice of God whispered into Samuel's spirit, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him." The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So the ceremony went on, and Jesse brought out his sons one by one. Abinadab, Shammah, and 4 more sons passed before Samuel. Each time Samuel waited for the Lord's confirmation, but heaven was silent. One by one, 7 sons stood before the prophet, but none were chosen. Samuel turned to Jesse with puzzled eyes. "Are these all the sons you have?" Jesse hesitated, almost dismissive. "There is still the youngest," he said. "He is tending the sheep." The youngest. The forgotten one. The boy so insignificant in the eyes of his family that he was not even invited to the sacrifice. Yet in the unseen places, among sheep and pastures, this boy had been composing songs to God, strumming his harp beneath the stars, fighting off lions and bears to protect his flock, and shaping a heart of courage and worship that heaven had been watching. Samuel said firmly, "Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives." Messengers hurried to the fields, and soon David entered the gathering. He was young, ruddy, with bright eyes and a countenance that glowed with life. At the moment Samuel saw him, the Lord spoke, "Rise and anoint him. This is the one." Without hesitation, Samuel took the horn of oil and poured it upon David's head in the midst of his brothers. Oil dripped down his hair and onto his clothes, marking him with the sacred symbol of kingship. In that moment, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David, anointing him for the destiny that lay ahead. Yet there was no crown placed upon his head that day. No throne awaited him. Instead, David would return to the sheepfold, carrying the secret of heaven upon his life. He was anointed king, but not enthroned king. God had chosen him, but God would take him through years of preparation, testing, and trials before the promise became reality. The beauty of this moment is not only in David's anointing, but in what it reveals about God's ways. Man looks at the outward appearance, the height, the strength, the titles, but God looks at the heart. In Jesse's house, the obvious choices stood tall before Samuel, yet God's eyes were fixed on the boy no one considered worthy. David's story reminds us that God's calling does not always follow human expectation. The path to greatness often begins in hidden places, where no one is watching but God. It was in the lonely fields that David learned to worship. It was in the wilderness that he learned to trust God for victory over wild beasts. It was in obscurity that God prepared his heart for a throne. The anointing that day did not change David's outward position immediately, but it marked a turning point in his destiny. He would still serve his father, still play his harp, still care for sheep, but he was now set apart. God had placed his spirit upon him, and soon the world would see it. Not long after this, the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and David's journey toward kingship began. He would face battles, betrayals, and years of waiting. Yet the memory of Samuel's oil running down his head was a silent reminder: God had chosen him. And when God chooses, no man can undo it. This story is more than history. It is a mirror for us today. Perhaps you, like David, feel overlooked, unseen, or underestimated. But remember, God does not anoint based on human standards. He is searching for hearts that are loyal to him, hearts that worship in the secret place, hearts that are willing to serve faithfully even when no one notices. David's anointing teaches us that preparation often happens before recognition. The oil flowed on his head long before the crown rested on it. And so it is with us. God may anoint you in secret long before the world acknowledges what he has placed within you. From that day forward, David's life was never the same. The shepherd boy of Bethlehem was now God's chosen king, and though the journey would be long, the hand of the Lord was upon him. And so the story of David's anointing stands as a timeless truth, that God's ways are higher than man's, that he chooses the weak to shame the strong, and that his eyes search for hearts after his own. The boy who was overlooked became the man after God's heart, the shepherd became the psalmist, and the anointed one became the king. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel for more.